You are listening to the Gospel-Centered Education Podcast, brought to you by Community Christian School in Tallahassee, Florida.
Hello and welcome to the Gospel-Centered Education Podcast. My name is Tom Augersinger and I'm your host, and my co-host is Kelly Allen. Hey, Kelly.
Hey, Tom. On the Gospel-Centered Education Podcast, we explore how we as Jesus followers can connect the dots between education, contemporary culture, and biblical theology and live like Jesus in this broken and challenging world. And today, we are doing a season recap.
Yep,
we have been all over the place this season, and we're just taking a moment to pause and just reflect on just some of the things we've covered and some of the things I've in particular learned. I've learned a lot this season as a parent.
I mean, it's amazing when you look back, just the sheer number of different kinds of topics we talked about.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe you can get us started today and give us a little hint as to what some of those topics, especially the ones that maybe impacted you.
Yeah, and so we're going with the school year. So we started in the fall on our timeline. We started in the fall, and we really covered a lot of books in the fall, and a lot of books about parenting too by Kathy Koch.
Yeah.
One of them was Parent Differently, and one of them was Screens and Teens.
Yes.
And personally, I really gleaned a lot of information from those books.
Yes.
Just kind of the theme of spending more time with your child. Just to see where they are, guiding them in every situation towards the Lord, and following that theme from Parent Differently into Screens and Teens, just being in the know, and being aware of what your child is getting into online, because it's not it's like throwing them into the world without any protection if you're not on top of those things.
Sure. So presence matters.
Presence matters.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's good.
And I feel like that kind of was the theme, you know, with those books. Just being involved, being present. And it's so easy not to be in this busy world.
And especially as they get older, because they're out and about doing their own thing. I mean, you have a student who's getting older, and you realize they're just out and about doing all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And what does being present really mean?
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, it's trying. I mean, it's realizing this is important.
Exactly.
And let's continue to try to be present. And then when necessary, to speak into, because otherwise you don't really know, I mean, honestly, you don't really know what they're doing.
You don't. And honestly, I think in today's day and age, you can, and I know I've been guilty of just being busy even when my kids are little.
Yes.
You know, you put them in front of those screens.
Yeah.
And you don't touch base with them, and it can be a babysitter.
It can be, yeah. Takes a lot of patience and wisdom and encouragement. I think that's the good thing about parents being in groups, and that's another thing that came out so in the parenting conversations was you need to have a critical mass of people who help.
Yes.
You know, it's really hard to be a lone ranger parent today.
Yes.
It's really tough. I mean, you need and maybe it's only 2 or 3, but you need somebody who has similar values and are willing to walk with you through that and go, hey, you know, this is right. This is good.
Yeah.
You don't have to go research everything online. This is right. This is good. It's biblical, etc.
Yeah.
Well said.
That's why, I mean, plug for CCS. That's why I really love the CCS community, because we are encouraged to, you know, be there for each other. And then we went into the anxious generation. Yeah. And that was a hot topic. We got a lot of comments about that because the author, Jonathan, is it Haidt, right? Yeah. H-A-I-G-H-T. He's not a Christian.
Right.
But we went there and we explored that book. Yeah. And that was very interesting to me, because you do have to take it with a grain of salt from the side that he, you know, he's a researcher. You know,
very smart guy.
And he's not a Christian.
Right. So his worldview is not going to be exactly the same.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of great things in that book.
And honestly, and I've told you this, it's changed the way that I parent because it's allowed me to realize that I guess my kid can do more than I thought without me. Yeah. You know, I think I tend to be a lawnmower parent, which is something that it's a term that I discovered this fall through this podcast. That there is such thing as a lawnmower parent, where you want everything to be safe for your child before you allow them into the world.
No, exactly.
And they can really do more than you think they can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, this is kind of funny because now one of the newer things is drone parent.
And I just heard that one
the other
day.
That?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. It's like I guess they're hovering overhead and they're killing everything that's trying to,
yes.
or whatever. It's it's
technologically,
so
with technology.
Yes. Yeah.
I have Life 360 on my child's phone.
Oh, okay. I see. Okay. That angle.
The app to where I can see where she is.
Give her respiration rate, blood pressure at any given moment.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
And that's something that I didn't realize. And I think that you had shared, I don't remember if it was on the podcast or in conversation with you, that if your parent would have asked you to track you, you might be offended by that.
Yeah.
And I never thought
Isn't that funny?
my kid could be offended by that.
Yeah. It's like you don't trust me.
Right.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Yeah. So that was interesting to me. And
sure.
there was a bunch of, things that came up with the anxious generation. So if you haven't seen that episode.
Yeah. And read the book, I would say too, because it is I think it's a very, very good book.
Yes.
A lot of great things. And it kind of jump-started a lot of those conversations around emotional health.
Yes.
Which I think was a big part of the fall.
Yes. And but then when Christmas time came, we went into Refractions.
Yeah.
And that has become one of my favorite books.
Really?
Yes, because
that's great.
I had shared that I went to art school.
Yeah.
And I stopped doing art because I didn't see really a point. I wasn't taught really how to create for the Lord.
Integrate theology in the art.
Make a difference with your art.
Yep.
And I think that's something that he does and something I learned. We had Melinda Gernhardt on.
Yeah, that was a great episode.
It was a great episode. And just everything she does is with purpose.
Yes.
And how she teaches the kids art at CCS.
Yeah.
It's with purpose and
100%.
Brings them closer to the Lord through that. So that was just amazing to me.
And that's Makoto Fujimura was the
yes,
author
I'm sorry.
of that.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yes. Makoto Fujimura.
He's got a new book coming out, by the way.
Oh.
Shameless plug.
Okay.
New book coming out. I can't remember the exact name of it, but I'm sure it'll be great. He's a great writer, one of our favorite writers. And then we did talk about the gospel itself for a little bit there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Was that in the spring?
I think that was in the spring.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So moving to spring, I think, we just really kind of pared it down a bit. We stepped back a bit and we really looked at what the school is doing.
Yeah, in some key areas. And it's kind of moved from those more abstract topics.
Yes.
Hopefully to a little bit more, runway level, what are we doing? What about athletics in Christian schools?
Right.
Gospel-centered schools, what about the arts and all those kind of things? Yeah. Academics.
And what does that look like? How does a gospel-centered school do all of those things? And really it starts with hiring great people.
It does.
Yeah.
I mean, it first and foremost, great people who know the Lord, people who can teach well, think well, and people who are biblically centered. And that is not something anyone takes for granted nowadays.
Right.
That can be a tall order sometimes. We also had Chuck Adcock, our board chair, on there. Talking about the future of CCS. I enjoyed that. I just enjoy him so much.
Yeah.
Such a genuine guy, smart guy, great businessman, and really he's good at engaging, and the whole board of trustees are good at engaging with some of the challenges. There's a lot of challenges that face schools in the 21st century.
Yeah.
And so that's actually a big deal.
Yeah, and he's a former parent.
That's right.
And just such a cheerleader.
Absolutely.
For CCS. Such a blessing to have.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
And so it's been a great season.
I think so. It's been a lot. I've really actually learned a ton just by working things out in dialogue. I think it's been helpful. And I think when you go beneath the topics, you think about kind of themes. What kind of themes are present?
Yeah.
We're present in the podcast throughout this season. So I was wondering, what are some of the themes that kind of stood out to you? The underlying themes.
Yeah. I think. I kind of understated this just a few minutes ago, but when we did the What is the Gospel episode, that runs through all of it.
That's right.
That runs through the entire season because you start there.
Yep.
And
that's the touchstone.
That's the touchstone that you start from and go back to in all of these different situations.
That's well said, yep.
Yeah.
That's well said.
So that's a theme. anxiety in parenting anxiety, fear, in parenting, and how that can, cause us to react, in a non-gospel centered way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that is one of the things I think when you talk about all these complex topics, whether it's emotional health or whether it's artificial intelligence or whatever it is, parenting, it's easy to look at the world and be fearful. And we've talked about that a lot. And it's easier to have anxiety because, frankly, there's a lot of things out there that are kind of scary.
Yes.
We haven't even talked about the Virtual Vance
I was going to say, I think Virtual Vance brought that out in some people.
Yeah. I was telling Vance today, Vance is our producer, and I was telling him today, it's like, I've had a lot of comments about the Virtual Vance episode, and, we've had everything from funny, cool, but the most common was kind of creepy.
Yeah.
And it was because it's this AI-generated figure of Vance.
Some people thought that was actually Vance trying to act like a robot. I did hear that comment.
Really?
Yes.
That's hysterical.
Yeah. Because
that's funny.
Like me, they didn't realize that could be done.
That's possible.
Yes.
And again, just for everybody knows, that was 1 minute of a video that he fed into this AI platform, and it generated that. So it's really crazy.
Yes. So anybody who hasn't heard that one or watched that one needs to go back to that.
And it raised a lot of good questions. It's not like, that's the other thing I wanted to say. It's not, we didn't bring final answers to all of these questions.
Right.
Because that would be super arrogant of us. I mean, these are really, really big questions.
Yeah.
Now, we have to have enough answers to be able to enable us to actually have a school and to teach and to have a community, a strong community, which I think we're doing that. But boy, things are changing fast, especially in technology.
Yeah, they really are.
A lot of stuff going on. So that's, I think those are really big. I think one of the things for me that stood out really was this sense of it's not easy to stand for God's kingdom and what it stands for in our society, even though we're technically not a persecuted minority in America, technically, but it's tough to do it because when you start talking about the fact that the Bible's completely true and that the Holy Spirit is real and active and personally active, that raises eyebrows, even in some Christian communities today.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that stood out for me was the necessity for young people and adults to be comfortable in standing alone for a kingdom truth, a kingdom perspective, value, etc. I think because there are times when the kids are going to have to do that.
Yes.
They just are.
And we've gone into how CCS trains them to do that.
That's right.
Yeah.
To the best of our ability, which again doesn't mean that we've crossed every T and that there's a guarantee that these kids or even the adults are going to do it perfectly, because no one does. And that's where the gospel comes in.
Yes.
And it's not perfect, but I think you have to set the structures up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
For that.
So how does this illustrate our current cultural movement in the West?
Yeah.
How does it define it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think that we're in a very particular cultural moment right now. And we talk a lot about this in the Colson Fellows program, which I'm about to finish up.
What is that anyway?
Colson Fellows comes out of the Colson Center, which was founded by Chuck Colson, who was the founder of Prison Fellowship. It's basically a really intensive 10-month worldview training. You read a ton of books.
Okay.
You have a cohort that you discuss things with. I think they're graduating or commissioning the largest cohort they've ever had.
Oh, wow.
And it's worldwide. So there are people all over the world learning all this stuff. And
so you've spent 10 months doing this, and
it's
you're
been
about done.
Incredibly fruitful. So shout out for that. I mean, they're looking for new Colson Fellows to be a part of the program. It's very, very good. It's a commitment, but it's well worth it. You know. Yeah. So I think like from a worldview perspective, the things that have stood out to me and all of the things we've talked about is the tendency for modern folks, and that's all of us, to move towards this radical personal autonomy, which basically in a nutshell means I am the reference point. I get to decide. And it's radical in the sense of in virtually every situation.
Right.
And that, I think in the end, I mean, just being really straightforward, Kelly, I think it's a bankrupt viewpoint. It's a bankrupt worldview because in the end, it does not end well.
Yeah, it's honestly a scary worldview for me because...
It is. Yeah. It really is. I think so.
I would end up in a bad spot.
Well, right. I mean, that's the thing. There's built into that the idea that I'm always right. Or I always have the right perspective. It's like, oh my goodness, no.
Yeah, it's like that's what I'm trying to keep myself from.
Right.
You know?
Right.
I always have to like recheck myself and think.
Yeah. And biblically speaking, you know, that's why we need community. That's why we need, you know, if you're married, that's why a spouse is very helpful. We were kidding earlier about the fact that one of the things that particularly I think wives are very good at, if I can say that, is being good litmus tests for husbands' crazy ideas.
Right.
I'm sure it works the other way, and probably too.
Just throw that idea out there and see how she reacts.
See how it works, yeah, because I think that's actually a true thing.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that's very complicated about today's world is this kind of neo-paganism, this neo-generic spirituality that's coming in, which is basically saying, hey, it's kind of moving from the scientific materialistic worldview to more, I'm a spiritual person.
It's very non-committal.
Very non-committal. It's good in the sense that people are recognizing that we need a spiritual life, that there's something existential, there's something metaphysical, there's more than we can see, touch, taste, and everything. That's good. But the problem is it becomes undefined. And therefore, it's like I'm spiritual and it gives me a lot of latitude and it doesn't require much of me.
Right.
And that's where it gets kind of odd and sometimes very weird. By the way, speaking of AI, you know, I think we were talking about this beforehand, but, you know, or I think I was talking about earlier today, that, you know, there's a whole new thing around people receiving spiritual experiences from artificial intelligence and what that all even means.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack there, but not today.
There really is.
There's a lot going on right there.
I don't think I want to know.
Yeah, I mean, it is super complicated. So I think those two things, that kind of neo-paganism, generic spirituality kind of thing, along with that radical personal autonomy, I think those are probably the things that I think infiltrate a lot, even within the Christian church. Maybe a little bit of the moral therapeutic deism, that God is basically here to make me feel better.
Right.
And I'm supposed to do good things. God makes me feel better, but other than that, he's not really that involved.
Yeah.
And so that's just not true. The Bible is not a,
I was going to say,
that's not a moral textbook.
Yeah. And that's not what it says as to who he is.
No, it's not who he is, right? And a lot of things get messed up when we don't get the definition of who God is. Right. Not that any of us have a complete picture of God, but the Bible is very clear in a lot of ways about who he is and what he's like, and that much we can be clear on.
Exactly.
And so we may not like it,
right?
but that's the God of the Bible, and that's who he is.
Yeah, and he never said it was going to be easy.
He never did he? You know, that's there was a situation that even, you know, just recently, some situations at school that are super complex.
Yeah.
And when you think about where the average American family seems to be today, I could have a skewed viewpoint, but it's just, the word just complex just keeps coming to mind. And people are trying to figure out how to have enough money to buy gas and food in some cases, how to deal with all this stuff, this more heady stuff we're talking about, how to raise their kids when their kids are turning around and walking the other way.
Right.
And then the marriages, and don't even want to get started on that because that's such again, very complex. And so there's so much of that. So sometimes because the more I learn sometimes, you know, the more I go, and you really start to feel under it. But there are some ways that we can we can realize there is a lot of hope at the same time. We don't want to always focus on the negative. And I don't think we've done that in the podcast.
No, I don't think so.
We've tried not to.
Yeah.
But it's an easy thing to do. So what are, Kelly, maybe some ways that we can begin to approach a hopeful perspective?
Yeah, well, first realize that there is hope.
Yeah, right.
You know?
It's not hopeless.
Right. Because I think, you know, especially with like when you see hard things or issues with like when you have fear about like technology and stuff like that, you do want to stick your head in the sand and almost give up.
Yeah.
You know, when we avoid as parents, that's giving up as well. You know, we get busy with work or do something else besides face it head on. But God wants us to face those challenges knowing that He's right there with us. Yeah,
that's so good. I was just talking with somebody actually today, and we were talking about artificial intelligence and or just like generative technology in general. And their response really was, well, we just don't do any of that.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, that's probably not true.
Right.
You just don't realize you're doing it.
Right.
But also kids in the workforce will have to engage with it at some level, most kids.
Exactly.
As they get to be adults.
Yes. At some point you do have to face it. Yeah, and I find that with a lot of parents as well. My peers, like, I feel as though I embrace technology. And I don't know if that's a good thing or not. We were talking to Vance about that. Because I said to Vance, I said, how do you feel about someone who, you know, just embraces it and, you know, just because I'm personally interested in it.
Sure.
So I think, you know, you do have to keep God in the loop with everything that you're doing because, you know, He could say, don't allow your kid to do that or cause you to find out, you know, information that you wouldn't have formerly known, you know.
It's really good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like so much of pretty much everything we talked about this year, God has to be in the foreground.
Yes.
And the issue is in the background. It's not like it's way in the background. I mean, it's there. It's discernible. You can see it.
Right.
But God is in the foreground. And I think that's one of the ways I think we begin to point towards real hope.
Yes.
You know, we have to understand, like, again, we use AI as an example, but it could be anything. It's helpful to understand something about it so that we're not, so often we tend to decry things we don't even begin to understand.
Right.
We just write them off and go, this is horrible. Well, I don't think that's what a thinking Christian would do. I don't think. I think we should at least try. We're never going to be an expert probably in it, but that's okay.
Right.
But the idea is you do engage with the conversation, you listen, you learn, which is what we're trying to do here, listen and learn.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think that's crucial. And then there, you know, when you go on from there, you can think about just the understanding of yourself.
Right.
You go back to Aristotle, you know, what's really the center of, he wasn't a Christian necessarily, but what's really the main issue in life? The main issue is knowing yourself for who you really are, and then knowing God for who He really is. And that's kind of good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really quite accurate.
I was part of a great congregation, I am now, but a few years ago, and they had a really great program. And they took you into this process where you understood like kind of where you are and where God is in it. And that's what they kept asking you to say throughout the process. Where are you? Where is God? And you can really do that with all these topics that we've been talking about. Where are you and where is God?
That's good.
You know, in this time. You know, in all the different things that we've talked about. Yeah,
that's really good. It's almost like you need some kind of mnemonic device like that because ultimately everything is so engaging and there's just so much of it. The volume and everything can be so overwhelming. You need something to help you kind of focus. You know, one of the things I've learned quite a bit about over the years that's been kind of helpful too is because when you start talking to people about values. What are the important values for someone to have? And of course, immediately getting all kinds of interesting discussions like, well, there's no such thing as values. Well, okay, I don't agree with that. And then there's people that will say, well, your values are completely different from mine, and that's fine because we're all unique individuals. Kind of, yes, there are some values you will hold that I don't hold. But there are universal values, I will go on a limb and say, there are universal values that are universally good. Faith, hope, and love are the three kind of historical Christian values, faith, hope, and love. And then classical values, which were practiced for a very long time, things like courage or fortitude. This is really important for everybody to have fortitude and courage. Probably something that's lacking a lot today in certain ways. Justice, focusing and pursuing the right and the good. A lot of people try to do that today.
Yeah.
Things like, let's see, what's the other one here? Where it is? Oh, temperance, moderation. Moderation.
We don't see a lot of that.
We don't see a lot of that going on, right? And I think the last one probably is the most important one, and that is prudence. In other words, wisdom. So really courage and moderation and justice and wisdom.
And I just had a conversation with my child about that the other day, about how one of their friends is very smart.
Yeah.
But we had to say, but are they wise?
That's right.
And there's a difference in education. And I guess you could see that a lot at CCS. There's wanting the academics, but I think CCS is kind of trying to teach the wisdom.
Well, that's it, because wisdom is really, kind of living well.
Yes.
And by living well,
Godly wisdom.
Right, that's right. We don't really mean, obviously, I think, we don't mean like, oh, you have a really brand new car, or whatever.
Right.
That's kind of living well. We're talking about living well by following and applying these kind of values, and by applying the gospel, so you can have healthy relationships.
Yeah.
Whether it's with people or money or things or the world or whatever it is, you have healthy, productive relationships. That's really what we mean when we say we want you to live well.
Yes.
You're all going to live differently in certain ways, different professions and everything, in different home situations or whatever. But that doesn't mean we're all not supposed to live with wisdom and with courage and with temperance and all those kind of things, and faith, hope, and love, because that's the human condition. So one of the things I struggle with the most, I think, as I think about it, that's actually another theme, is this theme that says we are all so different that we can never find anything in common to say this is what we all should do.
Right.
This is how we all should be. I've had so many conversations with people that's just not true.
You're walking on dangerous territory there.
I think so. Because what does that mean? So I don't even know. Yeah, there's a lot. So we talked about that.
That could be a whole nother episode.
That's a whole nother episode. So I think where I would like to land, this in our kind of pre-wrap up, because we also have one more podcast next week, but basically our wrap up is on really what the ultimate hope really is. And we've talked about it a number of times, and that is the kingdom of God is operational in this time and space now, and it will not be complete until later when Jesus returns, but it's still operational now, and especially in certain pockets of mercy where God is really having his way in obvious and clear ways. All I'm really saying at the end of the day is that the word is true, the Spirit is personally active, and God is not going to be, this is an important statement, I think, God is not going to be defeated by AI.
Exactly.
It's not like AI is going to defeat God.
No match.
No. It may cause a lot of things, but it's not going to do that. Virtual reality is not going to cause the end of our civilization.
And we can be confident in our God.
Correct.
Yeah.
We can be confident that we are on a trajectory. He has a plan. It will come to fruition the way he wants it to come. And that is the great hope of the Christian, for sure. He has actually won. So I wanted to share this verse as we close here. This is out of the 2 Corinthians 4, famous verse. For we are not proclaiming ourselves, the Apostle Paul says, but Jesus Christ as Lord, which we say at the end of every episode, and ourselves as your servants for Jesus' sake. For God, who said, let light shine out of darkness, has shone in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of God's glory in the face of Jesus Christ. And that really is the central issue. So as my closing statement for today is, and this is really focusing in kind of on the kids and the parents, because that's where we live every day. The world, our kids do not need more fearful or angry parents.
Right.
Either angry at the world or fearful of the world. They don't need that. What they need is they need parents who have wisdom, discernment, and courage to do what's right according to kingdom values, and who are willing to, frankly, throw themselves on their face before the Lord and say, I don't got this. I just don't got this. But you do, and to surrender themselves fully, and I say this to myself as a grandparent, surrender myself fully to the Lord and say, I believe you have this.
Yeah.
I'm going to pray like crazy, and you're going to do what you need to do, and that's good, but if we spend time with him, it's going to matter.
Yes.
It will definitely matter. And so that's really that's the best encouragement I can give people.
Yes.
I really do. I think that's important. So anyway, a lot said there, I suppose. But so next week, we got one more actual podcast.
We will have Mr. Stephen Passetti talking about world languages and missions, and he has quite a story.
He has quite a story.
I cannot
he's just
wait.
the coolest guy.
Yeah, it's going to be really good.
It is going to be very good.
Season finale.
Stephen's one of those people that anybody who knows Stephen loves Stephen.
And I have never had a conversation with him.
Never
so
really?
You're going to. So I'm looking forward to this.
He's just such a genuine, humble guy.
Yeah.
He's actually studying for the ministry right now. He works at CCS. He's studying for the ministry in the Anglican Church.
Oh, wonderful.
Just an incredible guy. So, so we're going to look forward to that. It's been a great season.
It's
been a lot of fun. Thank you for all of your work this season.
Thank you. I've had a lot of fun.
And we're looking forward to the third season.
Yes.
We got some really cool ideas, I think, to do next year. So that'll be a lot of fun. So at the end of the day, like we say every week, if you forget everything else we say and we've said today, remember that Jesus Christ is Lord. Have a good day. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Gospel Centered Education Podcast, brought to you by Community Christian School in Tallahassee, Florida. You can find us online at myccs.org.